Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Batman Superman World's Finest issue 40 by Mark Waid, Adrian Gutierrez and Matt Herms. World's Finest returned for a rather different and interesting adventure as Metropolis is attacked by a Kaiju and Batman, piloting his own Ava unit, battles the creature as Superman watches on. An hour before the big battle though, Bruce Wayne, Clark Kent and Lois Lane assure Commissioner Jim Gordon that he'll do fine on his first ever on-camera interview with Frank Rostler, podcaster who, as Lois puts it, is a very dude bro and has very dude bro energy about him. Bruce knows that Jim needs to do this to earn Gotham some goodwill since, as Rostler has said it, Gotham is a festering hellhole, and now's Gordon's chance to prove him wrong. This is such a fun setup for the issue, and about time we got more of the Bruce-Clark dynamic outside of their costumes. Wade's done it a little bit here and there throughout this book, and here he employs the classic idea that they both kind of act like competitors to each other in their civilian attire. There's a playfulness to them both trading quips and zingers and everything, and it's really fun. It reminds me a lot of after their first initial meeting in the animated series where they knew who each other were and they were always just kind of having fun with each other. Perry White is also there to join Jim, assuring him that he can handle Rostler, comparing him to nothing but a bully, but the secret is to just keep a level head. The group is called to set and Lois plans on going and doing the write-up on the interview with Clark, but Bruce swoops in with a great little jab at Clark as he asks Lois out for a drink, knowing full well that Clark is with her. As I said just before, this reminds me so much of the animated series stuff, especially this part, the early stuff where Bruce would chase after Lois and was constantly asking her out for dinner or a drink or anything, but she was not interested at all, being that she just thinks that he's just a dumb billionaire playboy, and she obviously is going out with Superman, so why would she trade that for a dumb billionaire? I also like that Bruce is just doing it just to rile up Clark. There's a great shot there where he's very, very well aware of what he's saying and knows that it kind of gets under Clark's skin a little bit. Jim and Perry's interview gets well underway, and Rostler, who proves to live up to Lois's dude bro description, tries to rile Jim up by pitting him against Perry, who's standing up for the interviewer and he's gotcha questions, and has kind of broken his own rule there a little bit about having a level head because he's immediately just yelling at the guy. Luckily, or unluckily if you view it that way, their interview is interrupted by a giant kaiju blasting through the studio. The studio evacuates promptly and Clark thinks that they need to get out of there since they aren't trapped in there with Lois, since they won't be able to do much good if they are. Bruce knows that nothing, not even the intern who has locked them in the room, will keep Lois away from her story. And he's right, as Lois kicks open the locked door and takes off to cover the kaiju attack. Lois has been something that up until now hasn't really been in this series because we've been, going to different worlds and dimensions and not really hanging about in Metropolis or Gotham. So we haven't really had much of a chance to have her in the story all that much until really now. And I like that Waid is including her in the story in a very big way. She's going to be sort of Perry's second as they cover this story and figure out what's going on with this Kaiju. Clark and Bruce take off and Bruce tells his friend that they need to pop by the Batcave for something. Elsewhere in the building, Perry, Jim and Rostler narrowly escape getting crushed. Rostler continues podcasting, however, much to the ire of Perry, who is sick of the millennial blabbering on about being a real reporter. Perry takes his microphone and tells the people to evacuate the north section of the city. Jim meanwhile goes into full cop mode, finding the monster attacked the studio first, and Rostler appears to be hiding something as he quickly dodges the question as if he knows what the creature is. As Perry and Rostler move to go and get out of the building, Jim stays in the building and begins searching through Rostler's destroyed office for clues as Superman and Batman, now in his very own Ava unit, confront the monster. The heroes get to work with Superman on rescue duty while Batman tackles the monster head on. I really got to give it up for Adrian Gutierrez, who's done a fair few of Wade's arcs in this book, and honestly, I put him on the same level as Dan Mora. His work is always top notch. It just looks fantastic. The issue really highlights his knack for detail and action set pieces. He did the Eclipso story arc as well, and I really loved what he did with that and how he displayed Eclipso's power, and it just looked fantastic. It was so colorful and made great use of all the page space he had available. Batman grabs the monster and flies it away from downtown and into Centennial Park as Superman rescues some kids from falling power lines. Batman begins figuring out what the creature he's fighting is, finding it to be quite formidable as it's unhurt by his sonic cannon cannons, electrical blasts, and every other weapon he has on board his mech. As the creature grabs him with its green tongues, he decides to try a more simple weapon, his fists, and he smashes the creature in the face. This barely slows the creature down, as elsewhere, Lois and Perry get to following the giant monster battle, reporting to the listeners of where they can find reinforced shelters to take cover in. Superman suddenly finds Batman's robot is breached as the creature smashes its fist through the mech's chest, causing the Man of Steel to finally get involved in the fight and uppercut the creature into Hobbs Bay. Superman decides with the people saved, it's time for him to properly aid his friend, and we get a cool moment of Bats and Supes working through the problem, with Superman having scanned for dimensional rifts or portals or time travel that this creature could have come from, but he finds none of that in the city. The heroes keep up their attack as Jim continues his own investigation, having found a child's drawing in Rossler's desk that looks exactly like the monster. Jim finds a name on the drawing, Hollis Jackson, and he tries to learn who this person is, asking Lois if she knows who they might be, but Lois doesn't find anyone working in the building by that name, but she does find a Melinda Jackson, Hollis's sister, who's an associate producer on Rossler's show. Finding the woman is actually still in the building in her office. Jim goes full cop mode and kicks in Melinda's office door, finding the woman is still indeed there. Jim demands to know where her brother is and how he is tied to the monster. So this feels like so long since we've had a proper Jim Gordon as a cop story, since he's been dealing with, Joker stuff, and then he's kind of doing his own thing now as a PI, but then there's also a story where he was hinted at maybe becoming a beat cop again, but that never went anywhere. So I really like that we have a story here where he's the commissioner, it's Commissioner Jim Gordon, and it's basically him in his prime, and he's doing his job, and it's just so good. It's like a warm blanket. It's like it's never left. As Batman and Superman continue to fight the creature, keeping it away from the city, Jim really puts the screws to Melinda, knowing full well that Rossler was expecting this to happen and he wants to know her and her brother's roles in this. Melinda finally cracks, telling Jim her brother has a gift where he can make things with his mind and they become reality, and she, on Rossler's behalf, asked Hollis to create them something for the show to drum up views and clicks. Only he created this giant kaiju that's now destroying the city. Jim wants to know where he is, rushing out of the room as he figures that he would have to be in the building in order to create the monster, since this is where the monster first appeared. Knowing he will need some help, Jim asks Perry to aid him in his manhunt for Hollis. Man, I really like how even characters like Perry White and Jim Gordon can be part of the quote-unquote world's finest, since, as I said countless times before since this series has started, the world's finest doesn't just refer to Superman and Batman, but all of these heroes and characters involved in this book. This time, Perry and Jim, who have been added to the roster and who actually get more page time than Superman and Batman this time round, since the Batman-Superman kaiju fight is kind of all just happening in the background. The real story is here. It's just thoroughly refreshing that the book can constantly do this and constantly kind of reshape what it is and do this rotating cast where we get all these different characters throughout the DCU appearing and showing up here and there. Jim and Perry soon find Hollis, finding him covered in a magical energy. He refuses to come quietly, figuring out that he can use his powers to deal with what he calls fossils. Now I fucking love this take on Hollis. He's a young millennial, dude bro. He loves this Joe Rogan guy. He's on his TikToks, he's on his phone creating soundtracks, he's like a complete little shitheel. The exact type of person you don't want to have superpowers. Hollis's attention is taken away from the kaiju when Perry and Jim turn up, so Superman is able to freeze it with his freeze breath, defeating it for good. Hollis meanwhile tells Jim and Perry that he's doing this all because he's a fan of Rossler, knowing that this is all about views and clicks, something two grandpas still using newspapers wouldn't understand. Hollis conjures up two constructs that attack Jim and Perry, telling them that when Rossler found out about his powers, he supplied the boy with power-enhancing drugs to expand his abilities, hence the kaiju. Before Hollis can end Perry and Jim with his constructs, Superman arrives, blasting the constructs away with his heat vision as Batman sedates Hollis, knocking the boy out with some gas. With the threat over, Superman helps up the injured Perry, but the man still wants to get the story out, wanting to call up the Metropolis Metahuman Crimes Division since they have power dampeners that will take Hollis's powers from him. Later on, Hollis, Rossler, and Melinda are all carted off by the cops for the damage they cause, all for views and likes, and Rossler tries to distance himself from the clearly insane Hollis, who screams that Frank wanted him to do it since Superman would have just saved everyone, something that clearly upsets and angers Clark since the boy put lives on the lines for nothing. And I really like that. I really like that Superman has that moment of like kind of shocked, like he couldn't believe what this kid has done, that this kid would just do all this just for views and clicks. Perry soon gets to filing one hell of a story about a media empire crumbling, something he's quite smug about, and I don't blame him. Jim wants to go and find Bruce since the billionaire would be pretty shaken up after the incident, and Perry bonds with Jim about Clark and Bruce both being cut from the same cloth and about how they're both scared of their own shadows. And I like that it just ends with them kind of walking off into the sunset, like they're now friends. They've survived this ordeal and they've become kind of best friends. That's a great way to end an issue. Batman Superman World's Finest issue 40 was a load of fun and a great little palate cleanser after the big time travel shenanigans from We Are Yesterday. I love that it was mostly focused on Jim Gordon and Perry White, having Batman and Superman kind of play second fiddle and in the background dealing with this giant kaiju. And as I said before, that kind of fits with the whole World's Finest title of the book. They're not just the World's Finest, it's all of these other characters that are as well. They're literally the world's finest heroes. Apparently in the next issue, we're heading into Bizarro World or something to do with Bizarro, so I'm very much looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to seeing if they actually reference what happened to Bizarro in We Are Yesterday, or maybe that this is the story that's going to answer that. And I'm looking forward to it since this book has just been a blast from issue to issue. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.